What's going on, y'all? Joseph Morrison, aka Kojo Locs, coming to you with another video. This is a Loc channel where I discuss Loc content, so if you're interested in that, hit the subscribe button, smash that like button, hit that notification bell so you're notified on all the posts the moment that I post, and we'll keep the ship rocking. Now, today, I actually wanted to talk to you all about something that, it just kind of hit me. I was like, you know what? Interlocking doesn't get a good rap. I feel like everybody, when they think about starting their Loc journey or wanting to get locks, it's all about comb coils, it's all about a retwist, and that's cool. It's probably one of the more, it's just the more common style that people typically do, but interlocking is pretty dope, and I personally like it, and in some cases, it might actually be better for you to do it depending on your hair texture and various other things, and we're gonna get into that in today's video. In today's video, I'm simply just going to be covering how interlocking works, so just the method itself and how that method will cause your hair to lock up. We're going to talk about how they feel, how they look. I know that's one of the big misconceptions that people have. They think it's going to look just not like typical or conventional locks. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well, and then we'll finish off by going into my pros, my cons, and just my overall thoughts on the process and interlocks in general. So let's dive right into that, shall we? Alright, so the first thing we're going to talk about is, well, how does it work? What is interlocking? Now, if we're comparing it to the conventional or the more common style, which is twisting your hair or palm rolling your hair or comb coiling your hair. So with comb coiling, it's really simple. You take your hair, use a little bit of gel, or, well, I'm not even going to say wax because you shouldn't be using wax, let's be honest. It's just not the best method. Take a little bit of gel. You essentially use that gel to twist your hair up. That gel is going to hold that hair in place, and over time your hair will get used to that position and start to lock up together and merge and marry and stay together. Now you got locks, right? It's the most common way to do it. It's probably the way that most locticians will do it, or the way they look to do it. Now the difference between that and interlocking is a locking method in which essentially you're kind of causing or creating knots at the root of the hair, and that's going to help it to stay in place more. One of the main benefits to that is if you are somebody who has looser hair texture, like I mentioned earlier, and I'll probably mention again, it's easier and probably better to do this method because it's easier for your hair to stay together. The looser your hair texture is, the more it doesn't want to stay together. So it's better to use a method that's going to keep your hair together easier so that you can actually go through this locking process and not hate yourself. So, how does it really work? Well, I brought this handy dandy string to show you how it works. Now, is this a ghetto way to show it? Sure it is. But here we are, right? Alright, so let's say that this, my hand, right, represents new growth. So new growth is just hair that's growing out underneath the lock. So naturally, as your hair grows, that new growth or new hair is growing under the lock. So if this is my new growth and this is my lock that's on top of my new growth, how interlocking works is we have a locking tool. So it's actually like a tool that a loctician or someone will use. They'll take the tip of your lock, right, and they'll put it through. So they put it through that new growth, right through the bottom part there. They'll pull it all the way up. Then they'll go through the side of that new growth, pull it all the way up. They'll go through the back as well, so coming back through the front of that new growth, pull it all the way up, and they'll go through the other side, right? And then pull it through. I can't even do fake interlocking, which is going to be one of the points I talk about because interlocking is not easy. And then you pull it through again. Now, the purpose of that is as you pull that through, right, you're essentially creating a knot at the bottom of that lock, right? And that knot is going to hold that lock in place. So thinking about it, it's going to be harder for your hair to unravel because you've just put 4 different knots at the root of that hair. And that root essentially is using that new growth that's underneath your lock to basically create that knot. And then over time, that'll grow out and you continue doing this process, well, for as long as you want. So that's how interlocking works in a nutshell. So it is a little bit more of a challenging method. Obviously palm rolling and comb coiling is a little easier, it's a little more user friendly, and a lot of people can do it at home themselves as long as they have the right gel product and they part their sections well. You probably need someone else to help you do it if you're just like a beginner to all of this. But it's easier to do. You're just twisting the hair, you clip it, you let it sit, you're good. But with interlocking, you want to make sure you're going through that new growth in all 4 corners. And the key is you have to make sure you're going all the way through in different ways each time you go through. So if you go through the right, then you can go through the left, then you go through the front, then you can go through the back, right? So if you mess that up, what can happen is you can actually have issues and have holes in your locks as your locks start to grow out. And I'll talk more about that in the pros and cons section, all right? So the next thing we're gonna get into essentially is just how does it feel? How does it look? And I think that's one of the things that a lot of people have a misconception about. Naturally, when you hear about the interlocking method, you think, okay, so you're just putting a bunch of knots in your hair. So isn't your hair just gonna look like bumpy and like knotty and like, I just feel like it's gonna look weird. It's gonna look like a, I don't know, like a slug or something.
Oh, gross.
Like a worm. Are worms bumpy?
What?
Worms are bumpy, right? I mean, some of them are bumpy. Right? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so some people think it's just gonna look different. It's not gonna look like a conventional lock. And well, I'm here to tell you, I don't believe that necessarily. So I, in fact, have interlocks. And why don't I give you a little 360 since I did just get a fresh tightening yesterday.
Nice.
And that may or may not be the reason I'm making this video altogether. All right, I'm back. But this is my hair, right? I have interlocks. This is what interlocked hair looks like. Now, my hair is about 8.5 months locked. So I'm not fully locked yet. I'm getting there, slowly but surely. So I'm more locked than somebody who's just starting out their process. But this is what the hair looks like. It's not super bumpy, you know, it doesn't, I don't know, I don't think it looks weird. If you're looking at my hair, you're not gonna be like, oh, you have interlocks. It's just, this is how the hair looks. And again, the more my locks are gonna start to mature more and more, they are gonna get a little bit thicker, and the ends especially are gonna start to lock up a little bit more. Obviously you can see that there is frizz, which is just a part of the process. But I welcome that. I mean, it's a part of the locking process, and if you're not good with frizz, well, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know, but this is what interlocks look like. Now, the fact that I got a fresh tightening actually helps me to show you what the tip looks like. So if you look right in here, so you see how the hair looks like it's all in that little knot right there? You see that, right? So essentially she took the end of my lock and went through that new growth, right? 4 different ways, and then pulled it out and it created that lock.
Cool.
Right? And that's how it holds. So now from now on, it's gonna hold like that. It's gonna hold in that place and I don't have to worry about it, right? And actually, this is gonna take me right into my pros and my cons. And honestly, one of the big pros to having interlocks is washing your hair. Now, I'm sure if you're somebody who's looking to start your locking journey, or if you just started your locking journey and you have comb coils, you know that washing your hair is like a whole thing. You gotta put a stocking cap on your head when you wash. You gotta be super, super gentle. And that's if you're gonna wash it all. Now, honestly, with interlocks, I can wash my hair. Like, whenever I honestly want to.
Oh, really?
Do I have to be gentle? Yeah, but I can wash it. When I first got my interlocks, I was washing my hair more frequently than when I didn't have locks. I was washing my hair every 5 days, and that's a whole other story why I needed to do that. I actually needed to do that. But point being, I was washing my hair quite frequently, and my locks held, they didn't go anywhere, they frizz up quite a bit, but that actually helps the process in the long run because it helps your hairs to tangle up. But point being, I could wash my hair, and that's a huge plus. And the main reason is because when I wash, that knot isn't gonna come undone, right? So that knot helps to keep that hair together, which makes the process a lot more user-friendly, especially if you're someone who's very active, or if you're somebody who, you know, is gonna sweat a lot, or do things that are gonna potentially lead to your hair unraveling. Having those interlocks is huge. Which takes me to my next pro, which I just mentioned, but it won't come undone. It just won't. I mean, I don't even know how much deeper to go into it than that, honestly. Like, that knot really helps to sustain your locks in a way that will not let it come out. Now, the one thing I will say is you definitely want to make sure that when you are going to get interlocks done, so let's say you got your lock started and you used whatever, you use comb coils, or you use interlocks to start your method, you use curl sponge method, whatever method you started with. When you're gonna go back to get a retightening or to get lock maintenance done to your hair, let's say you're 1.5, 2 months in, if you're gonna go back in and do a retightening or a re-interlock, you wanna make sure that you can fit 1 to 2 fingers through your new growth. So obviously I don't have new growth right now since I just got a retightening, but if I can't put at least 1 finger through where my new growth would be, or 2 fingers through where my new growth would be, I would not recommend that you get interlocks, because you're not going to be able to go through the new growth as much as you need to in order to keep that lock sustained, number 1. Number 2, and this is a con to the interlocking process, is that it is something that does strain your roots a little bit more than retwisting, right? Or than doing that palm roll or the comb coils. It is a little bit more tighter on the roots. And one thing you want to consider when you are starting your lock process is you don't want to do things that are too detrimental to the roots, right? So if you're gonna do interlocking, I would wait at least 2 months between retightening before you go back. Why? Because you want to make sure your hair grows, you want to have an abundant amount of new growth, and you want to make sure you just let your roots chill out for a couple months. You don't want to be going in and getting interlocking every month. Even if you are somebody whose hair grows very fast, and let's say you could go back in within a month, which would be a miracle to me, but still give your roots a little bit of a break, because when you do this tightening method, it's a little tight, right? And the one thing I'll say is, if you do have a loctician, you want to make sure that she's not doing it too tight, right? When I leave the chair, yeah, it feels a little tight, but it's not like I'm not leaving like, oh, my head, like it's fine. But it is a little bit tighter because I'm knotting at the root, as opposed to just palm rolling the hair like a retwist would do. So that is one of the cons, right? You want to make sure that you're spacing it out and going at the appropriate time so that you don't damage your roots, because damaged roots can lead to loss of locks, thinning locks, scalp alopecia, and those are all things that you do not want. So give yourself an abundant amount of time between you go in and get your retightening done. Another pro though with interlocking is the fact that the method in which you're keeping your hair together is through making a knot in the lock. You don't really need to use any product really to go through the process, because the way that you're allowing your hair to lock is by that knot. Whereas with something like a palm roll or a retwist or comb coiling, you're relying on that gel to hold your hair together for a certain period of time to allow your hair to want to start to marry and lock up. Naturally, when you're going through any process, you want it to be as natural as possible. And there are gels out there that are good to use, and I've used gels in my hair as well. I'm not saying gels are bad by any means. However, if you can go into your locking process and put nothing in your hair essentially, or no added products, that's only going to benefit you, right? Putting things in your hair that are not of your body, or your body is not completely familiar with, is just something you don't need to do if you don't have to. So one of the benefits to interlocking is that you do not need a lot of product, if at all, and that's pretty much it. You know, it's a really beneficial factor. And the more natural you can go with your process, the better off it's going to be for your hair. And the last thing I'd say as a con is just, it's a hard process to do by yourself. So, you know, if you're somebody who is tight for money, or you're on a budget, or you just don't want to spend money on your locks, you're then going to have a steeper learning curve to learning how to properly interlock your hair, because it's a bit of a process. There's a locking tool involved. You have to make sure you're going through each lock 4 different ways each time, so you can't be distracted when you're doing it. You know, if you're watching a show, you go through and you're like, wait, did I go left? Did I go? Like, it's just, you got to make sure you're on point with it. You want to make sure you're not doing it too tight. You want to make sure you have enough new growth to do it. So there's a lot more factors into giving yourself a retightening, and that's why I would recommend getting a loctician and just a professional that can do it right, where you won't have any issues. You're not going to deal with any holes in your locks down the road. Because the one thing with interlocks, you really don't know if you've done it correctly unless you're being super attentive when you're doing it yourself. But if you miss a couple or you go through the wrong way, you're not going to notice until down the road when your hair starts to mature. Then you're going to start having holes in your locks, and you don't want that. So, you know, it is a little less of a user-friendly technique. Palm rolling is super easy. It's pretty self-explanatory, and it's something that you can learn pretty quickly. So that's one of the cons I would say, is just, you know, there's a learning curve to it for sure, and I would recommend going with a loctician. But all in all, I love interlocks, and I'll say this. When I started my locking journey, or before I started my locking journey, I was actually gung-ho, super excited about comb coils. And I've told this story a bunch of times, and I won't bore you with the semantics now, but I actually started with comb coils and my hair came out twice. So comb coils just wasn't the method for me, because I do have a straighter hair texture, contrary to popular belief. So interlocking was better for me because that's a stronger hold, as I mentioned. And after doing that, I'm more than happy with it. But at first, when I realized I had to do interlocks, I was disappointed because I had those misconceptions that it's gonna look bumpy or it's just gonna be weird. It's not what I had envisioned. But I'm really happy. And you know what? That's the interesting thing about this locking journey. Like, your hair will kind of show you certain things about yourself that you might not have known. And at the end of the day, you gotta kind of listen to your hair and listen to your scalp. Like, they're the ones that are dictating what you gotta do, and you just gotta do it. So all in all, I'm happy with interlocking. I would recommend it. I think that it's a locking process and a locking style that's very low maintenance, more so than comb coils. You can wash your hair, you can let it grow, give yourself some time between interlocks, and you're good to go. Yeah, so that's pretty much my rundown on the interlock thing. If you're considering it, hope this video helped. If you do want to see more lock content though, I do have a bunch more videos, so for sure check those out. Make sure you subscribe to my channel, like and share the video, because it is very helpful to my channel. And other than that, have a great day, you know? Kojo Locs, signing out y'all. Peace and love.